this is all just my opinion, but because there's just too much of the population that are just uninformed, and I don't mean that as like a negative thing. It goes either way. Uninformed from even having an opinion or an experience that they can draw from. So you have these people that actually know the true nature of the majority of dogs, any breed, and these are people that embrace pit bulls and love them and know them to be friendly and fantastic animals by and large. That's one side of it, one side of the equation. And then you have the other side of that coin, which are people that, flagrantly exploit tragedy, promote hate, promote racism, promote death of these dogs. And that's not an exaggeration. Anybody can go onto the internet and look at how these people talk about pit bulls. Many will routinely talk about eradicating them. They'll talk about them as a group in ways that if you simply slid pit bull out and put any other phrase in, you'd find them to be disgustingly racist, and their statements would move them to the absolute fringe of society. Think the KKK, literally. And this group of people is very small. I mean, it's a very small group of people, but in concert with them, you'll then have a second tier of people that are constantly hearing their message of awfulness, and it's conditioning them to think along the same lines, and that group is much larger. Many of these people are very likely that they've never even seen a pit bull, and they will actually source the smaller group of vile people that I just first spoke about, because their hate's all over the internet. You can go on the internet and you can find all kinds of anti-pit bull sites, and they're run by the same people. And outside of those two sides of the coin, then there's the big middle of the population. These people are probably too busy with something else to even care or to even notice. And again, that sounds bad, but I'm just simply observing that everyone's life is like made up of thousands of things. So getting them to the table on a dog issue just isn't something that automatically happens. Well, yeah, and even if they are, it's still like life's crazy. People's lives are crazy. So to ask them to be engaged in something like this when they have nothing from their own personal life at stake is it's kind of like a difficult thing sometimes. But ultimately, most people, I would hope, know the difference between right and wrong in its basic form. A lot of that's subjective, but then a lot of it isn't. And the issue is basically finding a way to get everyone engaged, that middle engaged, because that's a huge portion of the population. And I feel if they were engaged, most people would be on the side of what I would deem the right side of history, and that would stamp out the extreme opposite of that, which is what I consider the hateful people. But it's almost like two factions are going up against each other, and the mass of population just isn't really engaged either way. And it's like, how do you bring this issue to the table? Because some people have labs, some people have Rottweilers, some people have whatever the case may be. They'd be engaged if their dog was under they'd be engaged if their dog was in the scope of whoever. Most people think that they're like this separate, they're in this separate column. There's like all dogs and then there's pit bulls. No, they're just dogs. Pit bulls are dogs just like any other breed, and that then on top of that, each pit bull is an individual. So to those people that have a preconceived notion about what a pit bull is, I challenge those people to just go down to your local shelter and meet a few of them in person, because I'm pretty damn confident that they'd come back with a different understanding at that point if they actually met one. Because shelter that I've ever been to, 98% of the pit bulls in there are really engaging dogs. Very few are vicious. Very few dogs in general at the shelter are vicious. And some of the most vicious dogs I've ever seen at the shelter were other breeds. But that's not going to make me see that and be like, oh, golden retrievers are all vicious just because one tried to take my finger off. I guess ultimately what I'm saying is the dogs themselves are far better mind changers than I could be or than anybody could ever be. If someone takes the initiative to go down to a shelter and meet, if a shelter has 100 dogs, big dogs, I guarantee half of them are going to be pit bulls, especially out here. So just go and meet a couple. And your viewpoint is definitely destined to be altered, and I believe it would be altered in a positive way. And then you get into the whole specifics about the fact that pit bulls aren't even a breed, so they're mixed with something. The majority of them are mixed with other things. So it's just kind of like it's one of those things that it's going to come back to bite every dog owner in the ass. Because even if you eradicate all pit bulls, right, exactly. And laws will always be created by inept politicians in order to act like they're actually doing something. So if you don't think they're going to eventually target your Doberman or your German Shepherd or whatever the case may be, you're wrong. It may take a decade, but it will happen, especially if pit bulls cease to exist. So they don't have that boogeyman to point to constantly. Then they're going to create a new one, and it could be your dog. So dog people need to stick together. That's my point.